the quad cortexes of the world. I love those, but that technology is going to be 199 technology here before long. It's a race to the bottom. It's getting better and better, and it's getting cheaper and cheaper. So you're never going to compete there. You have to figure out the part that you can make that's unique to your core audience, or at least to a audience. I'd spent so much time, like literally not sleeping for 15 years. I wasn't being an effective operator of a business. I didn't have the knowledge. I was burned out. And I'm like, I don't really want to stop because I like it, but something needs to change.
Are you concerned at all about the rise of digital modeling?
I always look at things like there's two paths. Like you can always stick your head in the sand and ignore it and think it's not going to happen to me and it's not going to happen to me, and then wonder what happens in 5 or 10 years. Or you can say it's going to happen. I need to make a pivot here. So what is that pivot going to be? Well,
welcome to the Products of Music podcast, where we share expert insights and inside stories from some of the leaders as well as rising stars in music technology. In this episode, I'm very happy to be joined by Brian Wampler. Brian is the founder, CEO, and chief engineer at Wampler Pedals, and has turned his lifelong love for music and electronics into a brand celebrated by guitarists worldwide. From the humble beginnings of modding pedals in his garage to producing some of the most sought-after boutique pedals in the industry, his journey is one of passion, innovation, and a relentless pursuit of the perfect guitar tone. If you enjoyed this episode, please do support the channel and podcast by liking and subscribing on YouTube, following on your preferred podcast player, as well as leaving a review, and sharing with your colleagues and friends. It's really appreciated and helps grow the channel in the future and ensure we get really great guests. Also, if you're a guitarist or enjoy guitar-related content, feel free to subscribe to my Adam Wakeling YouTube channel, where I post just guitar and guitar-related content. But without further ado, here's my interview with Brian Wampler. Brian, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to speak with everyone.
yeah, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, in this episode, we'll talk about all things product development at Wampler, your approach to things. We'll talk about entrepreneurship. We'll talk about what the future of the industry potentially looks like, as well as do some community-based questions I have as well from the fine people over at Reddit. I think a good way to start, though, is particularly for those who are less familiar with the Wampler pedal market.
Sure.
Do you want to introduce yourself? Where was the first seed of the idea for Wampler pedals? Where did it all come from? And that, I guess, Cliff Notes journey to launching the company.
Sure. Well, for those who don't know me, I'm Brian Wampler, the person behind Wampler Pedals. So if you heard of Wampler Pedals and thought it was Wampler, it's actually Wampler. I was just a musician, man. I've been playing guitar since I was like 8. Not very well, but I have been playing guitar since I was like 8. So, and I was in bands and trying to figure out, like in the 90s, like how I was going to make it in the music business. And, I was going to make albums and tour and all that kind of stuff. And eventually I found out that I can actually chicken pick a little decent. For whatever reason, that kind of came a little more naturally than like shredding. Even though I was kind of like more into shredding, I just can't do it very well. So anyways, I found myself into country bands and got some gigs doing that. I was traveling back and forth from here to Nashville, Tennessee. And just for fun, like I was just modifying pedals. And I got into it just because a buddy of mine here in Indianapolis sold me his Boss DS1 that he modified. And of course I had like a regular one and I was comparing it to his. And I was like, oh my God, how did you make this sound so much better? And he explained, like, I just did some modifications. There's these forums that you can go on and find out how to modify your pedals, like what parts to change. And so I was like, I thought it was really cool that I could just take a pedal that already existed as, something that was just okay and change a few components and make it really cool sounding. So that kind of put me into this rabbit hole where I'm like, okay, I've got to modify all my pedals. Like everything needs to be modified. And that led me to, well, I'm just going to start building some of my own. That'd be really cool to take something that I made whenever I'm traveling back and forth to Nashville and just have something unique that no one else has. And I found out that more people were asking me about the stuff on my pedal board than they were asking me about my guitar playing. So I'm like, all right, I think I have an opportunity here. And it looks more like selling guitar pedals than it does selling me playing music. And so that's what I kind of did. Like I started selling on eBay. I started selling on like forums and stuff like that. Back before like Facebook and all that thing. So that's what I started doing, and that just kind of gradually built up more and more. And I would actually was already owned a business, but it was like remodeling, so it wasn't like a music business at all. So I just thought, there has to be a way for me to make a living doing this versus like swinging a hammer all day long. And so that's what I kind of did. Just like kind of kind of fumbled my way through it really, and figured out, okay, so there's two different paths. We can either sell direct to consumer or we can sell to retailers. And at that time, you never really mix the two. It was like pick one or the other. So I kind of chose the path of let's try to sell to retailers.
Mm. So was there any other co-founder, did you get any advice from certain mentors, that early stage process for someone who hadn't really been in that particular niche before? How did you approach that?
There was a lot of different people that really helped me over the years. Seymour Duncan, oddly enough, was one of the big people that really gave me a lot of help whenever I was like at this stage of what do I do next. He really let me just pick his brain whenever I wanted. So that he was a big help. But there's been a ton of people along the way that I've met, and they just said, ask me whatever you want. Like Paul Reed Smith, we had a good dinner one night where he just let me ask every business question under the sun. So there's been a lot of people like that have, kind of been placed in front of me that I just had the opportunity to ask. And then other times it's just where I tried something and it failed miserably. And I'm like, all right, well, that's not the way to do it. Don't do that anymore. So that's happened. That's happened quite a bit, and it still continues to happen. I mean, I'm a big believer that a lot of like going to some form of success is just screwing everything up along the way and figuring out not what to do.
The importance of networking, that's what I get from there in particular, getting into a network with great minds and leveraging them, and forming a relationship, I guess, where hopefully at some point you'll be providing value back to them as well.
Right.
Yeah,
you're exactly right. That's a huge part of it. I mean, a lot of this stuff, I mean, I could have fumbled my way through it and figured a way to make money from it. But I don't know if I didn't have people that I could just say, here's the thing I'm really struggling with. How do I fix this? And for them to have already been through it and say, here's how you do it. Step 1, step 2, step 3. That's the way you fix it. That was it was really, really helpful to not have to make a bunch of mistakes and really kind of like a shortcut, sort of a shorter path to where I wanted to take the company. So that was really helpful. It was just knowing, and a lot of that's just NAM, right? Like going to NAM, talking to people, meeting people, at least in those days. These days, I think that's really changed. But the networking component was a huge aspect of it. But yeah, there's at that time, there was no other like partners or anything. There is now. As of 2016, I partnered with Boutique Amps. And so they run a big portion of the business. I do more of the marketing and creative side, but they do like all the manufacturing, all the distribution, a lot of the B2B sales type stuff, which is basically you have different sales reps that sell to retailers, and so they handle a lot of that type of thing.
You talk about mistakes and learning from that. That's something I'd like to dig into a bit later for sure. But just more generally speaking, your focus to product development at Wampler, what does that look like? You have an idea in your head, you put something together on a table and you start iterating and bringing people together. And what does that process look like from that ideation all the way to actually a product release? What are the key pillars to that?
Well, it's changed a lot over the years. Starting out, and I would say we probably were a legit business around 2008 or so, even though technically I was still selling some pedals around 2004 or 5. At first it was just like, I like this pedal. Let's see if anyone buys it. And there still is a bit of that, but there, a lot of this is maturing as a business person where you're figuring out, okay, well, the market is saying this. They want this type of thing. And so I need to provide this type of thing in some way. But I don't want to do the same old thing. And so here's an example. Everyone's released a tube screamer. I think everyone that has held a soldering iron probably has released a tube screamer type circuit. We have too, several times, but I always put a different spin on it. So you have like the Paisley drive, which kind of is tube screamery, but not really. It's a little bit more fuzzy, and if you want a traditional tube screamer, that's not your path to it. And then we have we did the Clarksdale, which is like an 808 with 3-band EQ on it, an active 3-band EQ. We recently did the Triumph Overdrive, which is a $99 version of a Bad Monkey, like a Digitech Bad Monkey, and a Boss ST1 kind of combined, because those circuits are kind of similar-ish. So still, like if you look at a schematic, like, well, it's kind of tube screamery, but it has a totally different sound. So that's why I say, like, well, I'm always putting my take on a circuit rather than just pumping out clones.
Yeah. It's a funny market, the guitar pedals. There's obviously so many established circuits, and whether it's a tube screamer style, a clon style, and there's a lot of infamy around the number of circuit types. And
yeah,
I guess innovating in that market is a challenge. In that product development side, how are you thinking about the innovative elements that go into them and to stand out?
Well, I guess I would start here. So a lot of the comments I see are people saying something like, I don't want another fuzz face. I don't want another big muff. In my experience, whenever you come out with something new, the first question people ask is it a big muff or is it a fuzz face? Because that's what I'm looking for. So it's hard to determine, like, what should I actually do? Because on one hand, I see people that comment this. On the other hand, I see people that want to buy my product that are saying they wish it was a big muff and or a fuzz face or something. So, and going back to that again, I don't like to just do a standard thing. So if I'm doing a big muff or a fuzz face, then I'm going to try to think, what are the things that I wish that circuit had? So maybe it's different EQ options. Maybe let's take a big muff, for example. Maybe I want the option of going from the transistor style version to the op amp style version. And maybe I want to switch in there that can also turn it into a clean boost or something. Like something that it doesn't traditionally do, or that someone else hasn't really done, that I think is just a unique spin on it. So there is a bit of guessing there, and some of it still is, I just want to do this because I want it personally. I'm just being selfish. Some of it is some of that as well. But ultimately, I'm not going to take a circuit and just put changes on it just to have a change. Like I want there to be a reason for that change.
Do you crowdsource much feedback, or is it very much quite internally driven and thinking about your own problems, your own desires, or do you see stuff in the market and bring that data in?
I'm always listening for sure. But I do get a lot of people that email me and say, hey, I wish I could have the sound of a Fender Champ inside of a gas can recorded in an old church or something. And I'm like, well, that's pretty unique. I don't like, that's a unique thing that that might be a cool, that might be a cool sound, but I don't think that Sweetwater's they're not going to buy that. There's no way. So, so basically what I'm saying is I'm listening to everybody, but at the end of the day, I'm also listening and watching what's happening in the bigger market, right? So I'm looking at what are all the retailers actually buying from manufacturers like me? What are they actually selling to the end user? So all that's kind of taken into account as I'm developing products.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about mistakes or things not quite working. What example do you have of a bad decision in that respect, just launching the wrong pedal that just didn't hit the mark?
We had, just like off the top of my head, so I had a really good booster called the Talent Booster. And I thought it was, this is going to be funny. People will buy it because it is a talent. It says Talent Booster. They'll think it's funny, and so they'll put it on the board, and it sounds good too. But actually, no. What happened is people thought it was just a joke. No one bought it. Like I sold 100 of them or something stupid, a couple hundred maybe. So yeah, it did terribly. And then later on, as people were finding, it in the used market, then people started asking me if we were going to make it again because they loved the sound of this boost. And, I'm not a big one to like discontinue something and bring it back. Maybe like a small run if I had like a guaranteed income source, meaning like if a Guitar Center or a big retailer said, we want 100 of these, then I might do something like that. And that's still a pretty small order. It really need to be something like 400 or 500. But if they did something like that, then I would probably re-release it, but just to re-release it for, 50 people, like we'd actually lose money on that. So I have to look at the financial side as well. I have to say, even though this would be cool to do, I can't basically lose a bunch of money in order to do something fun and cool that I want to do, right? Like I still have to run the business of it. So that's kind of how I'm approaching that. So that's one mistake. There's like 1,000 mistakes, like how not to hire, like that, hiring employees is a process and a skill that I just didn't have, and I kind of started out like, here's my family. Maybe I can talk them into helping me. And I love them, but that's a hard thing to do, is working with your family. And often your family are not the employees you want, because like it's a different relationship, You're saying, do this, and they're saying, Dad, I really don't want to. I don't want to do that today. I want to go play video games.
So how do you hire talent now then, if it's not family and nepotism?
So a lot of it is, there's a totally different path. So hiring now is, I'm taking the things that are filling up my time, and I'm also taking into account the things I really don't want to do that someone is better suited to do. Mm-hmm. Finding the person that has that skill. I have standard order SOPs basically. So I have like recorded videos of how I want it done, like sort of like a database of it. And then I'll find someone that's good at that. They'll have all the videos, they can see how I want it done. I just give it to them and let them run with it. Mm. So basically, I mean, I really go a lot leaner than I used to. Keep in mind, like I'm not talking about manufacturing all that stuff, because that's all done by boutique amps. So this is all on the other side, the product development, the marketing, general vision, that type of side. That's really how I approach it, is kind of finding a person that has that skill and is a good fit there, rather than trying to talk my, nephew or something into doing a job for me. So
diving a bit more into the product dev side then, what does the actual, the process look like? I suppose, how long does it take for you to develop a product as well? Is it a 6-month lead time before you start thinking about the actual manufacturing of it? How long is that particular stage?
It's all over the place. So there's been some stuff where, I guess I'll start here. So there's times I'm just in the shower and I'm like, what would be cool is if and then I have an idea. It's like, yeah, I'll shower, or write it in my phone as a note. And then I let that marinate for a few days. And sometimes I come back to it and I'm like, that was dumb. Other times I'm like, that actually has legs. Let's see what happens. So then from there, I might draw out a schematic and start working on like the circuit side. Get a breadboard, which basically allows you to make a circuit without soldering very quickly. So I'll get a breadboard and just kind of experiment with some stuff. And once I make that on a breadboard, I actually put that away and store all those. So it's kind of like it's a big pedal. So I'll set that on a shelf and I'll let that sit for a week or two, maybe a month, and come back to it and do the same thing. Is this cool? Do I still like this? Am I still feeling this? And if the answer is yes, then I'll proceed and go forward and keep moving it forward until generally we'll get a prototype made. I'll get that back. I'll compare that to the thing that I have on the breadboard. And because whenever you get a pedal made, like on a circuit board, there's always different things going on. There's just the way that a breadboard sort of works with the electronics is kind of different than the way it is with a printed circuit board. And the layouts make a lot of difference and all this kind of stuff. A lot of technical stuff. So I want them to sound exactly the same. So sometimes that means I'll actually have to tweak the prototype to make it sound more like the breadboard. And then, so we'll do that maybe 2 or 3 times. I've done it 8 or 9 times before until it gets to where I want it to be. From there, like let's say I have the completed circuit, happy with it. It may be a bad time in the market. So it may be a time where, like, let's say it's like more like a blues breaker based sort of pedal, like a King of Tone or something like that. Maybe that in the market, like that's just oversaturated and no one's buying it right now. Well, then that needs to go on a shelf for a later time, because everything always has a cycle. It'll always come back around. So I'm always in that process. Like I probably have 40 different circuits that are completed and just waiting, just all different types of circuits. And so sometimes I'll even pull them back out a year later. And I'm like, you know what? I actually think it would be better if I tweaked, A, B, and C. And then that whole process kind of goes back over again. Now I'm kind of modifying it, getting more circuit boards made and getting more samples back to try to once again go through that whole process again. So sometimes that process is a 6-month process. Other times it's a 3 or 4 year process.
So how are you gauging those good times to release them? You mentioned there about oversaturation, but is it tapping into certain trends that are happening, certain artists that are coming up, where there's a certain sound? What are you looking out for those particularly good moments to move to that launch stage?
I've been trying to figure out some sort of framework or system that I could like make a concrete version of it. I think I'm working with like NAN and make.com and some things like that to sort of automate this process, because up to that point, it's really just been me reading things, writing notes, and sort of looking at all my notes and trying to make a determination of what's happening. So a lot of it's just been from the gut. But I think, especially with everything you do with automation now, I think there's a way to actually make a system that will automate that entire process for not only guitar pedal companies, but just about any company. Just basically fill in the blanks. It does its thing. It runs its automations and it spits out information that you can use to run your business.
There's a lot of people out there who maybe are entrepreneurial in spirit. They're trying to think of where to start. They want to create a business. And to be honest, I think there's a lot of fear in the market as well that AI is going to take over many tasks for a lot of white collar workers. And I think there's actually going to be a bit of a movement into that hands-on stuff, maybe like creating their own pedals and creating their own brands and leveraging that. So what's some advice that you can give to people who are maybe thinking about that they'd like to do something and in that spirit of what you have done?
I would say it's always scary when big change happens, right? I mean, when the internet came about and people started email marketing, then all the marketers were like, oh no, I can't run ads. Like ads aren't going to be effective anymore. And oh no, magazine ads aren't doing anything anymore for us. And direct mail marketing where we're, actually writing on postcards and mailing them to people, that's not going to be as effective. What do I do? Well, you learn the new thing. You learn the new way of doing it. And then you figure out a path. In the same way that like farming changed completely with tractors when they were invented. Like there's always going to be change. So you're not going to stop AI. It's not going to happen. I would say if your position can be automated, then you have to figure out a way to make it not automatable, right? So, I mean, there's a human element to everything that you just can't recreate with AI. Maybe you can in 5 years. I don't know. At that point, then maybe universal basic income will be something that we just all live on, and then we all write music every day and have fun. I don't know. But for right now, I mean, I think finding that unique part of you that can't be duplicatable is really important. But as far as pedals are concerned, I think I would tend to agree with you. I think the path, if you're starting a pedal company, is really more along the lines of kind of building them small batches, more like a crafter of sorts, rather than a big company that's making $150 pedals. Because at that point, there's kind of a race to the bottom. Like the stuff that you're getting overseas now, if you're in America, is pretty good. I mean, it's really good. But 20 years ago, whenever like the boutique industry was starting, it wasn't that way. That didn't really exist as much. So now like you can buy, $70 pedals off Amazon. They sound fantastic. They are using a lot of designs that boutique makers have created. I mean, so
ethics are maybe involved as well.
They're going to sound good whenever you're stealing good designs. I say stealing, I don't mean actually stealing. It's just, circuits work the way circuits work. But if you're using a design that sounds good, like everyone loves the Klon, right? And those pedals sound great. So if you make a pedal that sounds like a Klon, it's probably going to sound great.
There's been quite a transition between the analog and digital world over the past, I don't know how many years. It's been a gradual process. It's kind of gone in waves as well. But, there's more and more digital modelers coming out now. I was watching a conversation with you and Josh from GHS a few days ago in preparation for this podcast. And one thing that you mentioned, I think, was, back in the day, people were saying, it's all about analog. Don't you put digital stuff in there? We want pure circuits. Now there's almost an expectation and a desire for that digital element in pedals way more than it used to be. And, that's been a shift in the market. And now we're seeing amazing modelers. I've got a Core Cortex behind me, and it is an amazing unit.
It's killer.
Yeah, and it's getting so close now, both in terms of sound and feel. Do you think that people who are wanting to move into this particular area, let's say in guitar pedals, just learning analog
as
circuits
a manufacturer, though,
as a manufacturer, as a
Okay.
boutique pedal designer, however you want to develop,
Sure.
do they need to be really thinking about the digital side of things now, because it's just going to really shift in the coming few years, decade?
My gut says, I mean, it's never bad to learn stuff. Like if you can learn the digital, if that's what, kind of like me with chicken picking. If you look at code and you're like, I get this completely, this resonates with me, then I go all in on that, because there's always creative things you can do there. But there's also like, I think there's going to be like a lost art of the analog. And I think analog's probably going to sort of fizzle out for a few years and then probably come back around like these things always do. It's just a cycle. And at that point, it's kind of like tube amps. Like the art of designing tube amps is probably, I'm trying not to make it lost. I want to make a course about designing tube amps because I don't want that to be lost. But I think if there's not like an organized system of retaining that information, I think bits and pieces get lost, and then other misinformation and wrong ideas kind of get introduced, and what was once great tends to not be as great, 50 years down the road. So I think if you're starting out, I would probably go this path if it was me. And this is just the way I'm wired. It might be different for someone else. I would probably go all in on kind of like the analog man model. I would have a base of people that love what I do. It was called the 1,000 True Fans rule about 10 years ago. If you have 1,000 people that love you so much and they'll buy something from you, let's call it a guitar pedal, and you make $100 off that guitar pedal, it's $100,000 a year. So the idea there being that you just develop a core group of people that love what you do, love you, love everything about you, and this is your family. And it's not really about getting the money from them, it's about serving them. So you figure out what are the things they want, what are the things they're looking for, what are the things they're needing, and you figure out a way to give that to them. So it's really about serving that audience more than extracting cash from them. Two totally different mindsets. That's the path I would go. If I was a person that was really just, coding and DSP really, it was like second nature to me, then I would want to figure out a way to do it that other companies aren't. So for example, the Quad Cortexes of the world, I love those, but that technology is going to be $199 technology here before long. It's a race to the bottom. It's getting better and better, and it's getting cheaper and cheaper. So you're never going to compete there. You have to figure out the part that you can make that's unique to your core audience, or at least to a audience, and really go on in on that. So maybe like you're really good at taking DSP, and you figured out a way to make it sound like the best Marshall amp ever. Only you have figured out how to code it in this way. That's just one, probably bad example, but one example of taking digital and applying it in a little bit different way than no one else is doing. And now you're the person that does Marshall type DSP better than anyone else. In a way, that's kind of what Wampler Pedals is. Like, we're not really known for like digital or delays and reverbs. We're kind of known as like the analog dirt company. Even though we do the other stuff, that's just people love our analog dirts.
Yeah, that's actually what I was about to ask you. What is the Wampler way? And it sounds like that honing on that, and
that's what people love. I mean, every time I put out a delay, the common question I get or common response, I guess, is, "This sounds great. When's the next overdrive coming?"
How do you feel about that? Do you mind that? Do you love that? I mean, what is your reaction to that?
It goes back to my purpose with it is I have this audience and they want something from me, and it's my job to provide that for them. So I really look at it more like that. I love overdrives and distortions. I've designed a bunch of them, tons and tons of them. I do love them, but if that's what people want from us, then I'm actually doing them a disservice by saying, no, I don't want to do that. I want to release boosters or whatever,
So there are many other companies as well operating in that niche. There are boutique pedal designers that also focus on predominantly overdrive circuits, fuzz, etc. So how are you standing out in that crowded market?
That's a good question. And it's something I kind of didn't know, I guess, probably because I'm so close to it. Whenever I would play other competitors' pedals, my gut was like, this is nice, but I like mine better. But I mean, I'm biased, right? Obviously, I'm biased because I designed mine. So I'm probably going to feel that way. But I don't really know, like, in the mind of a consumer, what exactly they're seeing different. I mean, I hear their words and their buzzwords usually, amp-like, organic, transparent, just all the typical buzzwords. But what is it exactly I'm doing different? I don't know other than making it sound good to my ears. That's the only thing I'm doing different is to me, with the way I play and the guitar I'm using and the amps I'm using, it sounds better.
Mm. In your particular niche, how do you say the different areas are for standing out? Obviously the overall tone, you've got maybe flexibility, configurability of the things, the design, that sort of thing. But yeah, what are you thinking about in terms of those unique aspects to guitar pedals in particular?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I think there's a lot of different things. For example, graphics for one. There's we're not we're not traditionally known to have the best graphics, even though I like our graphics. But I mean, if you read Reddit, I mean, there's people like, it looks like my dad's pedal. Well, I'm a 50-year-old dude. It probably is going to. But I mean, there's other companies like I saw. I can't remember the brand name, but it looked like a pack of Camel cigarettes. And I thought that's really cool. That's very creative, very well done. And so I see like a lot of pedals look great. So I think that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is like Chase Bliss, right? Like everything, you can control every parameter. Joel does that very well. Like that's his unique selling point, and he owns it. That's an example right there of being very good at digital and applying it in a unique way that no one else is going to do. He owns that space. That's a great example of that.
It's divisive as well, actually, because to your point, get your 1,000 fans, whatever else, and there's a huge following for Chase Bliss because they want that super configurability, tons of options, dip switches, all that fun.
Yeah.
And I did actually own at one point a Chase Bliss Brothers pedal, and it did sound great, but I just found it so overwhelming, trying to dial it in exactly how I want, option paralysis. So, I mean, the irony, I have a quad Cortex, so for me, I still have the option paralysis on the digital side, but I do like the analog pedals with minimal number of knobs personally. So I'm a very different market to that, I think.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of a good thing for him because his audience knows what they're getting, right? They know that if I want to control everything, this is the way to do it. This is the company I need to buy from, and this is the path. Versus like you said, someone that wants 3 knobs and just a good sound. That's not really his unique selling point. He's not talking to that customer,
Those people looking to get into guitar pedal making, I know that you mentioned earlier that you do have some courses available to people. So do you want to expand on that a bit? And I believe it's guitarpedalcourse.com, right?
It's guitarpedalcourse.com. So a couple years ago, I had the idea. Let me start back earlier. I actually wrote a book in like 2007 or so, old book on Amazon about how to modify guitar pedals, because I actually thought that was going to be my model early on. I thought I was going to be like the DIY writer book guy, because for whatever reason, I kind of have a knack of explaining complicated things like guitar pedal circuits in a way that a lot of people can understand. I use the term, I kind of dumb it down to like 5th grade level, where it's still explainable, but there's some parts I'm like, that's not important. You don't need to worry about the math behind it. It does what it does because it does it that way.
Yeah.
Like if you're an engineer, you might want to know this stuff. But if you want to make a great sounding pedal, just assume that that's how it works, So I had written that, and then I really kind of got out of that and focused on selling pedals. But over the years, I've had people just ask me over and over for more stuff. And how do I build pedals? And you should make a course. You should write more books. And I thought about doing it during the COVID era, but like 2020, 2021. And I just was so busy with Wampler Pedals, I didn't really have a chance to. So about 2000, I think it's 2023, I made my first course, which is, and I was just filling the waters here. So it's basically about how to take the guitar pedals that you have, how to use them in the most effective way. And I'm kind of thinking like the person that may not be really into pedals, like some of us who've been living, breathing, eating, and sleeping it, but more like a person who is fairly new to using a lot of pedals and maybe putting together a big pedal board and just not really sure, like, how do I set things up and where, if I'm putting things together, how am I getting different sounds? There's so many knobs, it's kind of overwhelming. So I'm kind of talking to that person with that course. But that course was really just to see if there was like, this was even going to work. So that did work, and I did get a lot of good feedback. And so I thought, okay, well, now since I figured out, like, here's how you make a course, here's how you record them, here's how you edit them, here's how you market them, all that stuff. That's when I developed the two. I have two so far as I record this. So one's like a beginner, how to design guitar pedals. And then there's the intermediate version. So the next course, which is the how to design and build. So it's sort of intended like you're going to take the first one and you're going to kind of graduate from that and then go through the second one. So the first one's kind of walk you through, like, how do you read a schematic? Like, what is it? How do you even connect a transistor? Like, what is an op amp and why is it different than a transistor? And how do they sound different compared to each other? And what is it, like, if you're using a transistor, how do I make it make fuzz? That it's kind of dealing with that sort of thing. So once we teach them the basics, then the intermediate course is like, all right, now here's where we take everything we've learned so far and we're going to make some cool stuff. So now we're going to start figuring out, how do we make a high gain overdrive or distortion, but how do we make it more chewy? How do we make it tight? How do we make it more martially? How do we make it more like a Mesa Boogie? Like, that's where we start really going into the nuances and a little bit deeper version of how do I take electronics, still explain in a pretty easy to understand way, but how do I take these electronics principles and make something really cool for myself? So, and obviously the next path is, now that I've learned that, let's say that I want to start selling some. How do I take this and create some sort of business around this? And how do I make it unique? And kind of like what we were talking about, like, how do I make this something that isn't just another pedal that's selling kits, on Reverb? So that's going to be, I think that's going to be a whole nother, I don't know if it's going to be a course yet or not. I've thought about making it more like app based. So we'll see. I'm still kind of developing that whole framework out.
Yeah, so I mean, you've also got many different strings to the bow, I suppose, of your own entrepreneurship. Do you think that, diversifying your revenue streams as you have between different things that you've got going on is really important as well as an entrepreneur?
It's funny. So when I partnered with Boutique Amps in 2016, it was kind of like I'd spent so much time, like literally not sleeping for 15 years. And I'd spent so much time that I really just, I kind of needed, I either wanted to get out of it or something had to change. Like, I wasn't being an effective operator of a business. I didn't have the knowledge. I was burned out. And I'm like, I don't really want to stop because I like it, but something needs to change. And so partnered with these guys. They're just really great at what they do. They're the same companies. Like, they work with Friedman. They work with Sedano. They work with Tone King. Like, so they know what they're doing. They're really good at what they do. So when that happened, it did allow me to sort of step back and really just kind of like, I was able to like raise my kids, and get them off to college and spending more time with my family. That was a big point. Like, I was missing time with my kids. I was missing time with my entire family. They just weren't seeing me. So that was a big part of it. So I kind of automated a lot of the things that really take up a huge chunk of my time that I hate. And that's what Boutique Amps really allowed me to do, is step back, be a little bit more focused on the creative side and the marketing side and just the stuff that I enjoy and feel like I'm good at. So now that, like I said, my kids are raised, the guitar pedal business is doing good. I've got I've got designs for 4 or 5 years from now. So I'm, basically I'm sitting here thinking, do I play video games today or do I make something else?
Wait for the cycles to return, right?
So, I'm just not, and I'm not the type that's going to like retire on a beach somewhere. I'm just like, I always have to be doing something productive and creative. And to me, like, I've always loved like the idea of helping people build businesses, especially in a creative space. And so I think that's just what I want to focus on for a while.
Out of everything, what are you loving the most at the moment?
At the moment, I'm putting together, I've kind of been not solo, but just I've had just a few people working with me. We mentioned that earlier, and it's been pretty lean. And I think I'm getting the itch to actually build a bigger team again. So I'm really kind of focusing more on like the operator side of running a business. And I really want to grow. I really want to grow a business with a few more employees, maybe 10 or 15 employees that are really focused on building this thing that I'm building. So I think that's, at least as of right now, that may change in 6 months. I mean, I don't know, but as of right now, that's kind of my focus, is just focusing on building a team in a creative space that everyone's worried about AI taking their job. And I think I can figure a way with using AI that no one's going to lose their jobs. They're just going to be way more effective.
Are you concerned at all about the rise of digital modeling to the traditional, pedal market? Even if you are integrating some digital components into the analog pedals, do you see that as a strong competitor? Is it an opportunity? How are you feeling about it?
I think really everyone in the pedal market is kind of, I would say, concerned, if anything. I think it's going to take a big chunk of the market. It is. Really, it's not that it's going. Is it going to? It is, as well as the tube amp market. It just is. So I always look at things like there's two paths. Like you can always stick your head in the sand and ignore it, and think it's not going to happen to me, and it's not going to happen to me, and then wonder what happens in 5 or 10 years. Or you can say it's going to happen. I need to make a pivot here. So what is that pivot going to be? Well, I need some time to think about this, and then go away from your guitars, go away from your everything, and just think. At least this is what I do. And I'll just write out, just get everything in my brain out onto paper. And I'm looking for what are the possible pivots that I can make that might make a dent. Like what are the things that I can do that might be a unique spin on things to keep others interested in my product? Or if I need to start introducing something that I don't know how to do, how do I get to the people that know how to do that? So like if we're talking neural modeling, for example, if I don't know how to do neural modeling, well, who does, and how do I find them? How do I hire them? Right. So that's the most obvious operator question. The other thing you could do is, well, there's now open source neural modeling. So I can learn how to do that. I can spend 6 months and just be really good at neural modeling. So like, I think those kind of pivots are what's going to be required. I think the day of buying a kit online of some pedal and selling it on Reverb, I think others will do it. I just think that method is going to be really, really much harder to sell as time goes on. And it is now. So it's just going to be a lot tougher sell as time goes on. Because like we said, you can buy like a $30 pedal now that's based off a rat, right? Or whatever you want, really.
I guess another threat I was thinking about was, people, let's say, go to the shop, they buy a few drive pedals, they take them home, they capture them on their modeler, then they just send them back to the shop and return it, get a refund within the 7-day window, and they've captured the, or even just, I suppose, going to the community and downloading other captures of those pedals which exist already.
Well, yeah, it's analogous to Napster, for those who remember that. That's where everybody who had music that you just uploaded to Napster, and now no one needs to buy any more music. So, the question is, well, what do? Well, eventually Spotify forms. Is that good? Not if you're an artist, it's not good. Not really. Not unless you're just using the music as a marketing tool. So like, for example, there's a lot of artists who they just put out singles. They're not really worried about albums. They'll just put out singles, and that single is just a marketing piece for them to tour, because, Spotify is not very good at recreating the artist touring, right? That's not going to happen. So the artist makes more money on tour. Ticket prices are more expensive, and $60 shirts are common, and Cokes are $20. Right. And there's downsides to that as well, but things always progress. Things always move in a situation.
Is that one of the reasons why I know that you've done at least one plugin of one of the pedals you have, right? So
a couple. And
is that going to be an ongoing? Yeah. Is that going to be an ongoing theme moving forward as a result of that?
Yeah. In fact, the next plugin is ready right now. I just need some time to get like the marketing side of it ready. So, it's I don't say what it is yet, but it's actually analog. So it's based off an analog product of ours, but it's a plugin. And it's going to be a fun thing to do. Cool. I always wondered though, I'm not real sure why other companies don't do that so much. I mean, it's sort of in the reverse. I wonder why plug-in companies don't then also make a hardware version,
Mm.
because like it's kind of a different customer base. And if I'm using plugins, there's a lot of times where I'm like, man, I wish I had like a hardware version I could take with me. I don't want to drag my Mac to a gig, you know?
Actually, I did a video on YouTube recently, my personal channel, and it was all about the best way to use a drive pedal with a digital modeler, in this case being the Quad Cortex. And
Hmm.
I plugged it in the front before the input, and then I also plugged it in the effects loop of the digital modeler, and then I also captured it.
Hmm.
And I did a lot of A/B testing of those three different options, and it was quite interesting because there are real strong pros and cons for each of those different
Yeah.
areas. And I think there's still some way to go in terms of latency as well. That feeling of hitting a
Yeah.
drive pedal, hitting a fuzz pedal straight away, impedance and matching, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It feels different. And also, it does sound slightly different compared to the captures.
Yeah.
There's no way about it. So I was quite surprised as a digital first person.
Well, you
Just
probably
how
have good
different I felt.
ears. I mean, it
Mm,
sounds like you have really good ears. And there's some people that can't hear any difference at all. I mean, myself, like you, like I can, if I don't hear it, you can always feel it. Even if it's just a little bit of latency, like there's just some sort of transaction between hitting a string and it hitting your ear that it's kind of like being in the other room, and playing guitar. Like there's a little bit of a disconnection. And I think some players just don't care, like, in fact, one of my family members, he plays guitar and he came over here to play my Marshall. And he had, up to this point, like he was younger and he had only played like plug-in versions of Marshalls. And he was like, I don't like this as much. He was so used to, like, he grew up and learned to play on like digital representations of what a Marshall sounded like. So
right.
being in the room with a 412 cabinet and a Marshall head, he says like, I just kind of like the plug-in better.
Yeah. I did go into the digital world for quite a while, just using plugins through monitors due to living conditions.
Yeah.
And I remember buying a new guitar, and I went to the place, and it was a really lovely shop, and they had a matchless combo as the demo amp to
Yeah.
plug the guitar into, which is amazing. But it's also really unforgiving. And when you're used to playing digital and suddenly you plug into this boutique valve amp, I was like, wow, I'm a terrible player. So yeah, I was very surprised on that.
For some reason, if I play like if I'm mainly like recording for a month or something, I'm just playing direct into the box. Whenever I play into a tube amp, my timing is off. And it really messes with me just a lot. So, and it may just be a me thing. Maybe I'm just like hypersensitive to that or something. But I've never really heard that many people complain about that. But I definitely notice a big difference if I'm mainly focusing on playing through my plugins, then
Mm.
going to something that's truly analog, just the entire analog signal path, it really messes up, especially with picking fast.
Interesting. Well, as we're running out of time a little bit, I'd love
Sure.
to ask a few questions
Sure.
from the Reddit community. So I'm going to try and read them out
Sure.
and see how many we get through. So the top rated question by Stop the Casual Racism, interesting username.
Yep.
What's a pedal you would like to see in the market, but that you're not actually ever going to create yourself? So what would you like to see, but you just know you're never going to do it?
I would love the ability to have endless, well, not endless, that's impossible, but like, let's say 2-minute, 5-minute IRs. So let's say, for example, you take an IR of a massive cave. Being able to recreate that in a pedal, like, you just don't have the processing power to do that. So and if you did, it would be so expensive, might as well just buy like a Mac or something. So that's probably, like, to me, I love stuff like that. Like, I love reverbs, especially just really good, unique reverbs, like reverbs of places you wouldn't expect. Like, I mean, like, as far as a guitar player, like stairwells and stuff like that, or even like different rooms. I'm infatuated with like room reverbs, just because every room sounds completely different. And one of the things I like to do is, like, if I'm playing through a plug-in, I'll crank up a lot of room so it kind of feels like with my speakers that I'm in a room a little bit. So that's just stuff that no one wants to buy a room reverb that's with a 60 millisecond reverb on it. Like, No one's really interested in that. But me personally, I would love that.
Yeah, the second one is not to get too political, but how will Mr. T in the White House, how is his tariffs going to affect your business moving forward? I'm sure it's already been felt already, but
Yeah, I
how are
think,
you dealing with it at the moment? And the
uh,
uncertainty, I suppose, as well.
yeah, I think anyone who's making guitar pedals or amps or anything that uses electronics at all in the music field is really struggling. Like you lost all the profit.
Mm,
I mean, the truth is, like, I know they're $200 pedals, but people don't really understand how it actually works. If I sell a $200 pedal, I'm not building it for like 60 and pocketing all that money. That's not how it works. The retailer actually makes the most money. So we're manufacturing it. We sell it to a retailer. They then sell it and they usually mark it down to try to sell it quicker. And so that's where a big bulk of the money is. But for us, like we're selling it at a lower price. And now with those tariffs, now we're almost selling at a loss.
mm.
So you don't really want to raise the price up anymore, but you kind of have to if you want to stay in business. So I don't know how it's going to work out. We bought so much stock before those tariffs hit that we're kind of trying to run on that and we're getting ready to run out. So I think real soon you're going to start to see some serious price fluctuations in guitar
Yeah, so
pedals.
the runway is ending soon. And once
It's,
the
man,
runway's
it's
hit, yeah.
not, there's nothing good about it in my opinion, as far as like for the end user, like I think us manufacturers, we hate it just as much as everyone else, but our hands are tied and there's not anything we can do. You're not going to find a company that's going to make 100,000 op amps for your guitar pedal. There's not any factories that's going to do that. Like that's just not a thing. So no one's going to build any factories to save guitar pedal land. Your prices are just going to go up or companies are going to go out of business. That's.
I guess further incentive to move to the digital side a bit more, where you don't have to think about those physical shipping and
Yeah.
sending us overseas. And yeah,
Yeah. I mean, profiles start looking a lot better, don't they?
true. Next question is by Nerdy Outdoors. Where do you see the space to create newish and original things or really unique revisions to existing pedals, circuits, and designs? Like everyone's got a tube screamer, a blues breaker, a reverb and delay. What, if anything, do you see as a space to push boundaries on those things?
Man, we kind of dove right into that, didn't we? About
Yeah.
30 minutes ago. I would go back and revisit that. I mean, because it all kind of comes back around to, if you're a creative person, you can build a tube screamer, but just find something different to do to it. In fact, I think John Cusack, I think he made a fuzz tube screamer. I don't remember ever playing it, but I think he made one at one time. And that's a unique thing you can do with a tube screamer, of course. But, there's 1,000 other things you can do. I mean, what if you take that tube screamer circuit and you wrap it up inside of some sort of, I don't know, let's say you have a compressor and a boost and maybe like some sort of doubling type device inside one box, and it's all one effect, one small effect, but it's all kind of combined together. Just off the top of my head, just do something different and unique that no one else is doing with it. And, but you also have to keep in mind, what are people wanting? Because if let's say you wrap that in a box that does fart sounds at the same time, that's going to be a gag gift. That's not going to be,
Yeah.
no one's looking for great fart sounds on stage usually.
Yeah. Pretty niche, that one.
Yeah.
A couple more quickly. So have you ever tried jacks on the face, knobs on the side? Interesting approach.
That's a unique point.
There's your
There might be a market
uniqueness,
there.
right?
There's your
Yeah.
unique market right there. Make a tube screamer, jacks on the top, knobs on the side. Not been done before.
That guy's got it made. Last one. So what circuit or pedal are you most proud of creating or developing?
Different reasons. So, I mean, like the Pinnacle was, I think that was one of the first ones, one of the first distortions that really hit, so to speak. Or maybe the Plexi Drive. That also did really well for us. And those pedals have been around for a long time. So I'm proud that it's like children. Like oddly enough, all these pedals kind of become like your kids because you're surrounded by them and you're always talking about them all the time. So like that sort of thing, those pedals that really kind of elevated Wampler to being, a serious pedal contender is I look at them very fondly in that way. But then like sound wise, the hard thing is that I've played through them so much that I'm usually most excited about a thing that's not even out yet. It's usually something that is going to be out, and that's the thing that I'm like the most excited about, because like, not to knock any of the pedals, but like whether it's a Bell or whether it's, whatever, the Cryptid or whatever, I've played by the time that comes to market, I've played through that so much that I'm actually kind of burned out on it, because I've been living, eating, breathing, sleeping that pedal, so it's like, if you make great hamburgers, like you have a restaurant and your whole thing is hamburgers and you go out for dinner that night, probably not going to eat hamburgers, Not that you hate them. It's just that you're always around them.
Right. Before the podcast, I was going to say to you that the Tumnus Deluxe actually is one of my favorite drive pedals in the market. And it was a bad decision for me to gift it away to someone. But I saw the interview you did with Josh at JHS, and you mentioned, funnily enough, that it's nice when someone says that they love the Tumnus or some pedal, but you particularly like it when they comment about a pedal that you've designed from ground up rather than an existing circuit in the market.
Right.
Yeah.
Because an existing circuit it's my cover song. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm an artist and I do a cover and people are like, "Oh, I love that song." You're like, "Me too. Wish I wrote it."
Yeah. Well, drawing to a close, Brian, I've got a few quick fire questions for you before we wrap up. A bit of fun, and then we'll give our closing thoughts. But maybe you've already touched upon it already, but what's your current favorite pedal from your own lineup? So maybe in terms of what you like playing with, maybe.
So, I'm actually more, you just use a little bit of dirt. And if I'm compressing, if I'm not playing loud, I usually use a compressor. If I'm playing loud, I don't usually use a compressor that much, unless it's for like a 90s, country song or something. Man, let me think here. That's a good question. I think, because I usually play like if I'm practicing, I play my prototypes. I probably, at a gig, when I gig, I play Pantheon a lot. I play a lot of Pantheon. I play the Gearbox. Depending what amp I'm using, I'll play the Plexi Drive quite a bit. I usually use the Plexi Drive through a lot of Fender type amps, believe it or not. And that's usually like my kind of core food groups right there. Like if I'm dragging something somewhere where I don't want to take prototypes, then that's usually what I'm using, is something like that. But I don't use a lot of gain generally, because like I'm an old guy. We mostly play like classic rock and stuff. So
do you use a compressor live, or do you just get that compression from the drive pedals?
So some places we play is like really small, like holds 10 people plus the, including the bartender. So in those, like in that club in particular, I call it club, that bar, we even use electronic drums because regular drums are too loud. So like right. It's super low. You probably don't even need microphones. So in that, I'm using a compressor. But again, if we're doing like old school, classic 90s country, then part of that sound is that huge compression pop. So you have to use a compression for that. But for the most part, it seems like if I'm soloing, I'll use a bit of compression because it hides up my mistakes a little bit. But if I'm just playing chord work, I usually don't use. I like the dynamics, so I won't use a lot of compression on that unless the song calls for it.
What is the most underrated Wampler pedal do you think there is?
Talent booster.
Talent, yeah, that's true. Rest in peace.
No, probably. Man, I wish I had sales numbers. I don't have them right in front of me. Probably. Let me think. That's a good question. I don't know if I've been asked that for a while. You know what? I don't know. Off the top of my head, I would probably say Ratsbane, because like it's not a straight up Rat. It's based on like the Rat topology, but I did some other stuff with it, like I always do, and I actually like both of them. So like if I want like that Rat sound, I'll have a Rat and the Ratsbane because they're so different, But I think a lot of people, maybe the marketing was a little skewed too Rat heavy, maybe. And because I really don't like to be misleading, so I don't want to say, I made it all up myself. That's all me. So I wanted to be like legitimate and say, it's kind of based around a rat.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people, especially those who love rats, thought it was going to be like another rat clone, and it's just not.
Yeah. What is your all-time favorite non-Wampler pedal?
Like, I'm assuming you mean like dirts and not delays and stuff like that, right?
You're cool. Whatever you feel like.
Yeah, I mean,
Desert Island pedal and all that.
I think some of the stuff Bogner did was really great, like the Lagrange. It's a great pedal. And I don't know how well it did, but man, I've always loved just how the realistic clipping texture of that pedal has always been really good to me. What is it called? The Rev stuff is killer. I'm looking at the pedals on my back shelf here. Have you tried the new Marshall? The new Marshall stuff is great. They have a new Marshall, I think it's called the Plexi, and it's killer. It's a great pedal. Now they have a JVM too. It's a little too high gain for me. If you like high gain stuff, you'll love it. But the Plexi is awesome. Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite non-Wampler pedals right now, just because I'm into this Plexi phase for some reason. I used to be like primarily a Fender amp guy, and for some reason, like I guess my taste just changed a little bit, and I know what it was. I got this Paul Reed Smith HDR X20, and I just kind of bought it on a whim. Sam Ash was going out of business. It was at a good price. And I'm like, it sounds great. Took it home, fell in love with it, and I'm like, I need to really dig deep into Plexis for a while. And so that's where I'm at. Like, I'm just going crazy on Plexi stuff right now. So
yeah, I think there's some good deals to be had on those little. It's this lunchbox head, right? The PRS. Yeah, they're actually quite affordable relative to other amps in that market.
Yeah, I think I bought that for like $600 or something. It's great.
Yeah. All right. So, any recent music or artist discoveries that have inspired you?
We just started working with Zach Top recently. He's going crazy in the country world. And so I've really been digging deep into his stuff. And it's just, I kind of did the same thing when we started working with Corey Wong. Like everything he was doing and just got obsessed with him for a while. Same thing with Andy Wood. Like I as far as like finding new music, a lot of it's kind of weird. I'm always looking for new music that just hits something with me that I can't identify. And it seems like a lot of music that I come across, and I don't want to name any names, but I come across, I'm like, it's listenable, it's okay. But nothing really like hits me like it used to. So for example, and this is probably a little bit old man ranty, I know, but it used to be like when you think about like late 70s classic rock bands, like even though everyone was using the same gear, because we didn't have gear like that back then, like everyone's using Marshalls for the most part, or Mesa Boogies or something, but generally like the Marshall tones always sound different. They're always completely different. Versus now, like I hear a lot of bands and the guitar tones kind of sound similar-ish. And I don't know if that's by design or just because they're like, just throw the quad cortex on there. That'll be fine. I don't know what to do. But I'm always like, to me, it's not so much about the song. It's just, I think it's more about like the guitar tone qualities for sure. And just about the overall vibe of it. And that's such a kind of an icky word, kind of a goofy word. But for lack of a better word, there's just a vibe with some stuff that I just really like. You know?
Well, on that, ranty, dad note, we'll bring things to a close. And Brian, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to have this conversation. I think there's some, really varied insights. We covered a lot of different ground, I know.
I tend to be a little scattered. So I appreciate it though.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. If anyone's interested to learning more about Wampler Pedals and your other ventures, where can people find you online?
Wamplerpedals.com, of course. And if you're into courses and want to learn about guitar pedals, guitarpedalcourse.com.
Excellent. Thanks again, Brian.
Thanks so much.